disclaimer. Okay, the information provided is for educational purposes and is not intended as medical advice or a substitute for medical advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare professional. We do not aim to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any illness or disease, and you should always consult with a doctor or other healthcare professional for medical advice or information about diagnosis and treatment, and the information in this presentation has not been evaluated by the FDA or any other medical body. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Dr. Doreen Arbo, and I'm your host on today's call. For those of you who don't know me, I am a clinical researcher and an author of several books. Welcome to our Tuesday call with Clayton Thomas, who is the founder of Root. Hello, Clayton.
Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. I don't even know what day it feels like today.
Today feels like Tuesday.
It could.
So when you were out of town on business, so last week we did our Q&A, but the week before you were out of town. And so we had the pleasure of the beautiful Dr. Tina to sub in for you. And we went over detoxification pathways in the liver. So today, and now he's gone.
Oh, I'm back.
Okay. So today in our series, we're going to go ahead and talk about water and its importance. But before we do that, we're going to have a short recap. Why don't you raise your hand so I can pin you to the
Let me do that. How do I do that? I have to go over here.
Where's
Participants.
Water.
I didn't say I could raise my hand.
What is my jam?
Yeah.
What was it?
Mary, we're going to have to wait on you. Why is everybody raising their hand now?
I'm supposed to raise my hand, not you.
I know.
Not letting me.
Just raised his hand. Mark just raised her hand.
It doesn't let me raise my hand. How do I?
Okay, wait. Let me find you.
Probably in the last page.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
wait.
Do I come over here?
No, let me go. Let me go here. Let me go here. Clayton, Thomas, more. Here. There. I got you in the front. There you go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, for our recap. Okay, well, as I said, we had Dr. Tina on our call to discuss the pathways. And we focused on the liver. So we actually had a call on this, probably last year sometime, about the self-cleaning mechanism our body has. And this is just one of the pathways. So we discussed the liver with Dr. Tina. And phase 1 liver detoxification pathway, this is your first line of defense against toxins. We also went over the Cytochrome P450, and P450 is a superfamily proteins involved in metabolism and in activation of foreign substances and toxins. And each protein in this family is highly specialized with a dedicated pathway inside the cell. But one of the things to know about Cytochrome P450 is that glyphosate actually inhibits this enzyme from working properly. So, and glyphosate, as we know, increases chemical residues and environmental toxins. We have a huge talk on this on the YouTube channel. And glyphosate suppression of the cytochrome P450, as you can see here in the liver, there are three things here. These enzymes here are important because they catalyze the formation of vitamin D3 to the active form. But you have a problem with that. Actually, we call that the double whammy, because not only do you have glyphosate, but you have heavy metals that prevent this, the P450 from working properly. And vitamin D, as we know, is really important because, as we mentioned in other talks, it has over 2,700 receptor sites in the body. So P450 means that the body burden of toxins can repair this second pathway. So that's why it's really important. But it can't do that because we have heavy metals and we have, and then we have the glyphosate issue. So in the phase 2 liver detoxification, we talked about this, that phase 2 basically gets rid of, it helps to, whatever phase 1, whatever's left over in phase 1, then phase 2 helps to get rid of the remaining toxins. This is done by making the toxins water soluble. So that way they can be excreted by the body. And one of the things that we talked about was that glutathione, sulfate, and glycine are the primary molecules responsible for this process. And under normal conditions, the phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes produce low levels of glutathione. And then, of course, under high stress, the body increases more glutathione. And of course, as we mentioned in previous talks, glutathione can actually be created, is created through your body. But one of the products that we have, the Relive Greens, has the precursors to create glutathione. And then the other product, Restore, can actually help to enhance the glutathione function. So you've seen this slide before. Glutathione is the second most abundant molecule in the body, just behind water.
And the most important antioxidant.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Which brings us to,
can I throw one question? Can I throw one question? Since I missed last week when you guys were going over liver function, did you also touch on the fatty liver issue, which we've talked about in the past, but due to how the body functions with fat storage for toxins, that we've become so polluted with glyphosate, with other stuff, that people have livers that are actually loading up with fat to store a lot of the toxins. Did you guys?
We did talk about that.
And how effective we've been in eliminating those issues.
Absolutely. And we also have case studies for that. Okay, so getting back to, see the good things that you miss when you're gone?
Mm-hmm.
Well, greatness usually happens when I'm not here.
Well, so the importance of water, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Fluid balance, fatigue buster, blood normalizer, calorie control, brain boost, joint lubrication, you know, working in the stem cell area, I can definitely say in orthopedics that water is really important as a joint lubricator. And it's important because, like, at night when you go to sleep, your spine, everything, like your joints, everything, like the rehydrates. And if you don't have enough water, that's not going to happen. Okay, so anyways, it helps to flush toxins. It boosts your productivity, skin hydration. It fuels your muscles. It aids on digestion. It helps to regulate your body temperature, and it carries nutrients to the cell. Water is the connection to all of us and is the conduit between us and the world around us, which you will see after this presentation. So how much water do we need? I actually tried to figure this out. Your body weight divided by 2, and then divide by 8 to find the cups. But then it didn't tell you, like, oh, wait a minute, is that in kilos or is that in pounds? So I thought, man, in kilos, I don't need to drink a lot of water. But then I did it in pounds. So, but anyway, so yeah, that you can calculate it that way.
But is also that an accurate calculation? Because
maybe not, but I'm sure we're going to hear from Mark, because I'm going to call Mark in on this, because Mark is he wrote a book on water, and I want him to share his story a little bit later on, but I just want to get through this part first. So Mark, don't go away, because I'm going to be counting on you to step up and talk about your experience with water and tell your story about your mom. Okay, so excuse me, water. You know, we detox only to retox due to the water we drink and the water we bathe and shower in. It's interesting that the earth is like 71% water and we are 70 to 90% water. I mean, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Almost like we are from the earth and the earth is from us, and that we're all connected and we're just this one big bundle of connected energy.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So here we go. So in a new study, researcher Julian Edelman of the University of Pittsburgh, the Graduate School of Public Health, the National Academy of Science, has shown that chemicals are present in municipal drinking water supplies are especially toxic to people when they're exposed to them when bathing and showering. And in the past, he says that inhalation exposure to water pollutants has largely been ignored. And his data indicates that hot showers can liberate as much as 50 to 80% of the dissolved chemicals into the air. And it's interesting to note that chloramine actually exists in three forms. It's monochloramine, dichloramine, and trichloramine. And these three forms constantly and rapidly shift from one form to another, and these chemicals vaporize easily out of the water that is when it's heated and it's aerosolized. And all three forms are respiratory irritants, with trichloramine being the most toxic. So by the time water reaches your tap, it's considered dead water. Because it's been subjected to massive amounts of chemicals. Now, this I got off the EPA site. This is really interesting. I took this, it's really sad because it was really difficult to find anything in Europe, but in the US, for those of you in the US, you can check this on the EPA site. Now, this is an example of the Rainbow Water Municipality. This is where I lived for many years. Excuse me, I have to cough.
Well, that's a fake cough. Can't even hear it.
You should hear it.
I'm back.
Good.
Okay, we're gonna cut that out.
Okay, I've got it, noted it.
Oof, okay, so Rainbow, and this is in Fallbrook, California. I was totally blown away by this, that this is in the water, 33 contaminants, 14 exceed the guidelines. I mean, look at that, 700 times arsenic. There are so many chemicals in here, and they even say the potential effect, a lot of them are carcinogenic. This is where Clayton lives. This is in the Brentwood Water Department. And he has quite a few things that are cancer causing as well. But you guys can go, if you live in the States, you can go to the EPA and look this information up. It's really interesting. So, but in the UK, they have trihalomethanes, and are the result of the reaction between chlorine used for disinfecting tap water and natural organic matter in the water. And at elevated levels, it's been associated with negative health effects such as cancer and adverse reproductive outcomes. In fact, I think bladder cancer is quite high. Yes, bladder cancer in the EU in general.
Yeah.
Which leads us to Dr. Emoto. And our Claire Bear, had the great honor of working with Dr. Emoto and helped him actually translate his books from Japanese into English.
Yes.
So Dr. Emoto conducted his findings by stating that water is the blueprint for our reality, and that emotional energies and vibrations could change the physical structure of water. And it is imperative to remember that water is life, and about 70% of the human body and almost 2/3 of the world is made up of water. Therefore, everything happening around us, our thoughts, our attitudes, our behaviors, our intentions are related to each other and can affect our emotions. And he knew that water can memorize information. He came up with water crystal photography to prove his theory, and he succeeded. And water crystal photography tells us that water reacts to information in the form of vibration given by showing the different designs. And he gained worldwide acclaim through his groundbreaking research, and discoveries were published in his book, for example, Messages from Water and Hidden Messages in Water. And lots of people resonated with this claim that water is deeply connected to our individual and collective consciousness. Claire, you want to talk about this slide?
Yes, I mean, this is where he, what he actually did is he's imprinted, or this is where he played Bach, the music, I don't know which symphony it was, to water. And then what he actually did is he freezes it. And as it begins to thaw out, that's when he's able to take the photographs and see the crystals forming of the actual symposium of Bach, Beethoven, whatever else. And this is the water crystal from sound, from music, and the effect that it would have on us. Mozart, it's interesting how each frequency is quite different to the shape and form that it has, and therefore effect on our water crystals. Beethoven. Yeah. Now this is heavy metal. Okay. Punk rock music. It's a little bit disturbed, and it kind of is not very. Anyone who's on the generation where we're exposed to heavy metal and rock, we would kind of feel these frequencies rather discordant, unfortunately. No beautiful crystals there.
So he went on and he created another groundbreaking experiment, Dr. Emoto, where he took rice and he covered it with water. And every day for a month, he said in one beaker, he said, thank you to one beaker. He said, you're an idiot to the second beaker. And the third, he just completely ignored. So after 1 month, this is the rice. This rice that he said thank you to actually began to ferment and had a strong, pleasant aroma.
Sweetish aroma it had.
Mm-hmm. And then this one turned black. The one he said it was, you're an idiot. And the next one, the rice that he ignored, literally rotted. Okay, who is that?
Are you able to move that?
Stephanie, okay, I think it's done. Okay, so words have power. If you think about it, words have power. And one of the things that Dr. Emoto was talking about too is he was really concerned about parents and children, and the way children, like the way you talk to your children, the way you spend time with your children, how this impacts them, because well, we'll talk about this in the next slide, but it can actually change the way. You've ever been like around somebody like that's in a bad mood, right? You are immediately affected by that mood. Well, anyway, so in the 70s, I can tell you, I did a little experiment in the 70s. Oh, that makes me sound really old, doesn't it? Yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. So in the 70s, I did a little experiment. I did it for school. I took 4 plants. One I played classical music to, one I said I love you, and the other I played heavy metal. The last one I yelled at it and said I hated it. And the ones that did the best were the ones that where I said classical, where I played classical music, the ones that I said I loved you, the other 2 wilted and died later. So I thought that was pretty interesting, like comparing the 2. Where again, your words have power.
Yeah, exactly.
So aggression changes your water memory. People actually feel negativity more acutely. Excuse me. Hatred, rage, annoyances exert destructiveness. A person sending negative thoughts is polluting their own water and giving their own body a negative charge. 98% of what we say to ourselves is negative. So you have to like really try to change the narrative.
Negative speak.
Yeah, absolutely. We are water. And like I said, we're 70 to 90% water. 85% of our brain is water. On an average, adults drink 2.5 liters of water, and 1.5 liters is absorbed during showering and bathing. It creates the structure of life. Your DNA, your amniotic fluid, your protein, water is essential to our bodies. Water has subtle energies. It can be imprinted with subtle energies, even from 10,000 kilometers away. There was a study done in Russia and in South America where they took two subjects. They hooked them up to computers. They had MRIs, doctors on each side, researchers on each side. And all of a sudden, they started noticing that their brains were actually syncing up. I thought that was a really interesting experiment, just to show you the power, of this subtle energy. So we are all, structures is composed of water, and we are all connected with others, even from a distance. And this has been documented. It's been studied. Water is a recorder and can be imprinted.
Hence the word, I feel it in my waters.
I've never heard that before.
That's an English
that's
saying.
very British. It's very British.
Very British. It says it all.
So this was an interesting study. This is an actual study. The hypothesis that water treated with intention can affect ice crystals formed. That this was a pilot tested under a double-blind condition. So a group of approximately 2,000 people in Tokyo focused positive attentions towards water samples located inside an electromagnetically shielded room in California. And that group was unaware of similar water samples set aside in a different location as controls. And these ice crystals formed on both sets of the water samples that were blindly identified and photographed by analysts. And resulting images were blindly assessed for aesthetic appeal by 100 independent judges. And results indicated that the crystals from the treated water were given higher scores for aesthetic appeal than those from the controlled water. So I thought that was really interesting because, every time we want to talk about something, we always look towards the science to see, okay, what is the science telling us to validate what we're saying? I think it's pretty powerful.
And it's quite interesting if you look at the one that says, it's very telling if you guys can see it on the bottom left-hand side, that you make me sick. There was another word that went with it, is I'm going to kill you. And if you look very closely, there's a little dagger symbol. So words are very powerful.
Well, this study here was super interesting. This was a groundbreaking discovery. I mean, the scientists were actually calling this the discovery of the millennium, a huge revelation in human consciousness. And scientists from Germany now believe that water has memory. This was back in 2018, meaning that once it was seen as a simple commodity, has now been closely examined to reveal scientific revelation, uncovering what they call a mind-blowing truth. By examining individual drops of water at an incredible high magnification, scientists were able to physically see that each droplet of water has its own individual microscopic pattern, each distinguishable from the next and uniquely beautiful. And they did an experiment where they carried out, like it was carried out by some students. They were all encouraged to obtain one drop of water from the same water source at the same time. And through examination of these water droplets, it was seen that each produced different images. And then they did a second experiment where they carried out, they used a real flower. They placed a real flower in a body of water. And after a while, the sample droplet of the water was taken out for examination. And the result produced what they call a mesmerizing pattern when it was magnified. But all of the droplets in the water looked very similar. And then they did another experiment where they took a different flower, they magnified the droplet, it looked completely different, and determined that the particular flower was evident in each droplet of water. So each droplet of water, wherever they placed that flower, had the flower in the, like an image of the flower in the water. So through this discovery, which shows that water has memory, according to scientists, a new perception of water can be formed. And the German scientists believe that water travels, as the water travels, it picks up and stores information from all of the places that it's traveled through, which can thereby connect people to a lot of different places and sources of information when they drink water in general, depending on the journey that the water had been on. So I almost want to say, like, Ripley's Believe It or Not, right? But that's what the science is telling us. So I think it's really interesting. This is really interesting. This was another research done about, this was called the secrets of water. How does water communicate with each other? So that's what they wanted to look at. So in this research, researchers investigated various kinds of water, from all sorts of sources and wells. Over 50,000 photos were classified over the last 15 years. And besides others, they once had water from a former daytime mine near Berlin. And it was curious to see a radiant, spiky edge at the edge of the drop. Here, you can see the spike thing here. This is the Berlin water drop.
Ooh.
And so they called it Berlin water. They tried to break this fence by dripping another drop of water near the Berlin water onto the slide. Next, they went to the holy Ganges in India and got some water there. They considered to be sacred. They thought this might break the water of Berlin. But although they placed the drop next to the Ganges, right next to the Berlin, nothing happened. Next, they dripped water from a pure mountain spring. And beside that, and then the fence actually began to open and the two drops began to merge. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the health, because hydration affects cardiovascular health. So here was a study that minor dehydration can promote cardiac disease, arterial hardening in young, healthy men. And this new study, this is what this new study found. This was actually a new study in the European Journal of Nutrition. The study indicates that hydration levels, even mild dehydration in healthy young males, play a role in the risk of cardiovascular disease. Well, this one is very interesting here. This was an investigation of the association between drinking water habits and the occurrence of breast cancer in women. So the proposed mechanism for the role of water intake is in reducing the risk of colon cancer is through decreasing, is basically decreasing gastrointestinal transit time, resulting in constipation. And constipation may result in slowing obviously the evacuations of potential carcinogens. And this study, the study that was done by Moretti, showed a tendency towards fewer bowel movements in subjects with breast cancer. So that's how this study got started. And the potential mechanism for the protective role of water intake for breast cancer may also be explained by the frequency of bowel motility, similar in the case of colon cancer. And it has been shown in previous studies that high levels of estrogen are associated with higher risk of breast cancer. And chronic constipation is described as fewer bowel movements, leading to decrease of gastrointestinal transit time, less evacuation of the stool, less evacuation occurs, the less and then there's less excretion of estrogen as well. So the estrogen is actually staying in your system, so resulting in higher serum estrogen, causing stimulation to the growth and division of the epithelial breast cells, and thereby increasing the risk of breast cancer. So that was a really interesting study. So here's the more interesting facts. These stats here were taken from Mark Taylor Hamilton's book called The Definitive Guide to Understanding Alkaline Water. And the main point here, I think, was really interesting was the 6-year study. This was actually published in 2002, where this was the American Journal of Epidemiology, where they found that drinking 5 glasses of water a day were 41% less likely to die of a heart attack during the study period than those who drank less than 2. So that's why I wanted to look up and see what's been done, more recent, and that's where we came up with the cardiovascular study for young men and dehydration. So that helps to validate that. And then also, as I mentioned before, the colon cancer. Well, the risk of that here, 5 glasses of water a day decreases the risk of colon cancer by 45%. 2 liters of water decreases the risk of breast cancer by 79%. And the biggest impact was the alkaline diet and the effect that had. So Mark, I'd like for you to come on and tell us about your story about your mom and your knowledge of water, because you are quite the expert. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up, Dory.
I told you this last week.
I know.
I reminded him as well today.
Claire said we might get you on, but no, that's fine. I wouldn't say expert. It was more from a passion. Basically, my mother was given 3 days to live when they found they'd missed this mass tumor inside her. And then if she lived past that, she would then potentially live 3 months maximum. And I went, that's a load of crap to the consultants. How dare you tell my mother she's got that length of time to live? So my uncle was a chief neurosurgeon, and I was pointed in some research towards some research. And one was, funny enough, was Dr. Emoto's books. And the second was the Canadian Ministry of Health, and the other was the Japanese Ministry of Health. And it was all around cancer can't grow in an alkaline environment. Medical fact, it's in the textbook of physiology. So I was thinking, how the hell can I make my mother very alkaline? And it's been really interesting, the journey, because I bumped into a couple of people that are ambassadors now that have gone through a similar journey, and they took Dr. Robert Young's kind of lessons, Sasha Reed, where she cured herself of cancer when she was written off by the doctors when she was 31. So it's coming back round, but this happened in 1998. So I started to look around things and realized that my mother was 70% water, so I had to look at the mass. I couldn't stop her smoking, I couldn't stop her anything else. And then I started to look at how does she take the biggest amount of water into her body? And it was then I realized in a 10-minute shower, she absorbs 600% more contaminants in a 10-minute shower than sticking a hose pipe in her mouth and leaving it there all day long. So I started to look into that research. Then I started to look at the different types of water, because not all water is the same. And we talk about water with these products. And the groups that I'm in, Sandy's got some great groups, and Dr. Dory's got some great groups. And you all see these questions flying around, but they don't get the basics right. And I think the products that Christina has developed really does need the foundation of water to be right first, and the pH of the body. If the pH of the body was right and the water was right, you wouldn't be asking so many questions, because the products would have a lot more opportunity to work. And that's what really got me interested in the products as well. But getting water right, mostly on all bottles, you'll see a pH. And the pH is really important. And what Dr. Dory's just said to you all about the water and the right water, your blood has a pH between 7.35 and 7.45, kind of what it's meant to be to optimally work. But 95% of people are over acidic, and that's why they hold the weight in the midriff first, because the body cannot get rid of acidity very easily, and it turns into fat cells. And so what you really want to do, if you can get your water right, everything else falls into place. And so a shower filter is really important. That's really important. Drinking water throughout the day is really important, because the kidneys can only process about 0.8 of a litre to a litre an hour. So some people try and shove all the water down the neck at certain points. So you really have to think about spreading the water out throughout the day. The calculation Dr. Dory was on about, it's work out your body weight in pounds, half that, and drink that in fluid ounces. That's as simple as it is, but spread that out throughout the day. However, most people will give up drinking water because they keep going to the toilet. But that's because if they haven't drank much water, the body's not used to taking it on board. So it's going to kind of literally put the V's up to it and go, I'm not used to this water. I don't need it. Let's get rid of it. Because your cells are normally, they need to be traversed. They need to be nice and buoyant and open because your cell's got a membrane around it. That membrane needs to be open and traversed. And then you've got big clusters of water. And if you drink tap water, that's got, in the UK, 300 different chemicals in some of the tests. So the cluster of water molecules hang around in the big cluster, and you've got these cells, and the water just can't get in. So you have to think about the type of water you're drinking. And ideally, you want 15 to 20 microclusters of water, and there are machines that do microcluster of water. But first of all, getting the right pH is the secret, and drinking it slowly over the day. And you've got to give it 4 to 5 days for your body to get used to be taking on water. And there's other ways of drinking water, like coconut water has a better uptake into the body. And so coconut water is a little bit easier to uptake into the body. So there's different types of water to think about. And also water attracts water. So if you're dehydrated, you can lose in 2%. Dehydration loses 30% concentration loss. And so when we get older, we're generally dehydrated and we don't feel thirsty enough. So drinking things like we go for a tea or a coffee, and that takes 22 glasses of water to neutralize the acid that's in tea and coffee. So there's a real big issue, especially in Britain, drinking tea and coffee. And that's why the Italians will normally drink a short, quick espresso, not these massive coffees. And if you go to Starbucks, you can get a coffee the size of your head with lots of milk in and things like that. So you just have to think about the effects. You might get an instant effect with coffee, but you're going to get a massive crash. And that's why these bad boys don't do that for you, because it gives you that consistency. So someone's just asked a question about coconut water. I mean, I'm a great Aldi fan and Lidl fan because they offer.
It's delicious.
And it's good coconut water, and it's £1.60. I don't know in your countries, but the cheapest water at Aldi for 2 litres is 17 pence, and it's the highest, and it's the same water that they sell at 34 pence. It's the same water. So I would just say, if you really want to get these products working really effectively and have good dinner party stories for your friends, is talk about the water and getting the pH and the water right first. All the other products will work so well, and you'll have so much more healthier, happier lives just getting the water right. And Clayton was talking about potentially pH strips and understanding what pH strips are, so you can test your own pH. And just think, because food is so important. Your biggest intake, as I say, is in the shower, but there's a reason people don't drink enough water, because they give up too soon. Don't give up too soon on the water, because you're going to cost yourself more in the products. So there was a lady on last week, I can't remember her name, but she said it took 6 months for the products to kick in. I would have really liked to understand, if we could know how hydrated you were before you started the process of the products would work so much more effectively if your pH was up and your hydration was up. You would then be shouting about the product so much more effectively. And because everyone's pH is different. If I had food and you had food, it would affect us differently. So we need to know where our pH is and our hydration. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I can send you a little book. I can pop it on here. I also did and the long story about my mom, and to finish it off, my mother was given three months maximum The research I found out, she lasted 10 years. And she had the rarest form of cancer called leiomyosarcoma, which is an aggressive spindle cancer. And the only thing I could control was what she showered in and what she drank, but she lasted for 10 years. So there's some absolute, you just cut me open and I shout about water all day long. My children are you know, force-fed water every minute. No, they're not. They just take it on board. They know if they're dehydrated. They know that they see a natural balance in themselves. But yeah, it made a massive difference in our lives because my mom got to see my son being born and things like that. But if we would have listened to the doctors, she might not have. And when she did die, I went into her house and I said, well, 3 months before, I said, Mom, where's the shower filter gone? Oh, the plumber took it off 3 months ago and I hadn't noticed it myself. And I kicked myself. But she didn't last very long after that. And cancer goes right through the body when it's acid. So it's really important you have that balance, and not to frighten anyone, but if you get your pH right, get your pH strips, that's a good indication that your hydration's up. And all those people that talk about blood, there's some great people that do blood analysis on here and in the group that can, yeah, you can get a dark field microscopy done on your blood. That's bloody amazing. But anyway, getting off my soapbox.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate that.
And there was another thing that we probably need to look at is also the whole idea of the dead water, and it does record everything. So even if you're taking the heavy metals out, the frequency is still there. So I think there's something with the fact that we're working with a crystal, it's going to clear the vibrational imprint as well, because the body sometimes doesn't like even filtrated water. So finding the right water, I think, is very important.
Well, having the purest forms of water, having it basically you can say wiped clean, you know, from reverse osmosis and processing standpoint. And I can give you some insight into what Christina's done in process of making clean slate and how that applies and why it's important. Because there's one little component. Sorry, I'm at home and Tilly wants to bark at everybody coming in the house. But the important part is, you know, purifying the water. But then the addition of the sea salt, right? So you're making the water similar salinity to what we are. And because we're not fresh water, we're salt water. I think it's a big thing for people to understand when it comes to water. Like, oh, I need to drink water. Yeah, we have to hydrate, but when you're really getting down to it, it's the electrolytes and the sea salt that really make us up. So it leads into other conversations about what type of trace minerals do you want. You want sea salt because it's the most bioavailable. But the ability to structure water energetically and through frequency and also through intention is what makes Clean Slate unique, because you have all of that from Christina with these little resonant crystals, likely nature's most powerful crystal, that are all combined, that are then resonating with not only the intent of what that crystal is made to do. And there's a reason, and I don't have my bag down here. I was going to do a talk on this, but is it not amazing that clinoptilolite on its own, this amazing little crystal, in its natural form, is a drug in Europe? Does that not give you an indicator?
Yeah.
This little crystal is so powerful that it's considered a drug. Okay, that's a good start. But then it's how you process it, which is what makes Clean Slate so special. And then the polarization process that's used, you know, to finish it off. So the magnetization and enhancement of and balancing of its frequencies. And that's where what Carolyn Mansfield's done with the dark field microscopy of looking at the fragments under a microscope, that not only do you see them fluoresce, but they also create their own linear structures with the harmonics that Christina's using and her intention. So what Mark was going over and what Claire and Dory's put together is absolutely in line. But there comes the key of when Mark is talking about acidity, right? And it's something that I was actually having a conversation with Patrick about last week, because we were talking about water. And there's so many lies and so much marketing out there pertaining to water that when you hear people talk about drink ultra alkaline water, right? Your body, like Mark was talking about, is about 7.3 to 7.35, 7.45, you know, somewhere in that range. And you say you have to drink alkaline water. Well, do you need it to be alkaline or do you need it to be energized? Because the alkalinity is done typically by sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, which you can get in your kitchen. That's what companies are doing to make ultra alkaline water when they're putting it on the shelf and selling it in a bottle. You can do that at home. And if you don't remember, your stomach and your stomach acid is 2.5. So when you put anything in your stomach, the 2.5 is going to balance out. It's going to make anything else acidic. So you don't need acidic water. What you need, you don't need alkaline water. What you need is your system to work properly so you can use the hydration and the energy and the frequencies of the water you're putting in. Primary cause of those issues: heavy metals, environmental toxins, glyphosate, like Dory was touching on. We can throw graphene in there. You can throw in a whole bunch of other stuff. It's those chemicals, those components that are creating the acidity. It also creates the blockages. Here's something that's really important. And we've gone over this a ton, and I don't have the published literature head. I know, and I would have looked this up, but it was published, it was like 15 years ago or so, that mercury actually shuts off, or not shuts off, it shuts off glutathione production, which we touched on earlier. But mercury will actually block a cell's ability to move water in and out. It actually dehydrates your cells, and cellular vitality actually comes down to intracellular water. And that's what we've talked about in the past. Do your cells look like grapes, or do they look like raisins? You prefer grapes. You want them full of water and plump. You don't want them dried out and all shriveled. And the heavy metals, the environmental toxins play a huge part in that, because if you watch some of the new FAQ videos that I think we have posted or that are coming to be posted, you'll see this, where Christina talks about bioavailability. And I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past, where everyone else is talking about making products bioavailable. The key to the question is, are you bioavailable? Because if you're polluted, you're toxic, it doesn't work. And that's the correlation and the balance that comes. And it's the one thing that we tell everybody you have to do when you start doing this. You have to hydrate. If you're not hydrated, you won't function. People that get headaches, or like Mark was saying, if you're not having benefits from what the Trinity is, it's likely that your body's not using properly what you're giving it. And that comes down to hydration. Your kidneys, your liver, your GI won't work if you're dehydrated. I'll give you the best example, and I proved this in one night, when John Sally is the individual who introduced me to Christina. I played professional basketball for 15, 16, 18 years, right? So we played for a long time. But when we first met, I spent the day with him, and I had a couple bottles of the sibling to what Clean Slate became. And so we spent the day talking. We actually talked a lot about water, because the one thing that he went over is when he's been raw vegan for 20 years. And we had a conversation about that mental health disorder as well. But he talked about the most important thing when people came to him wanting to lose weight. The first thing he did was colon hydrotherapy, and have them do at least 3 to 6 sessions of colon hydrotherapy for 2 reasons: 1, to flush, but 2, to hydrate. Right? So you're putting in a ton of water, really, really quickly, purified water, so your GI can start to rehydrate. That's important for one reason, because extra water is actually stored in your gastrointestinal system. And as your body needs it, it sucks it back out of your GI. And he was talking about the importance of drinking a gallon of water a day. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between the two of us. John is 6'10". 6'10". I'm 5'10". He has a little more surface area than I do. So we were talking about the benefits of taking some drops and the detox benefits, which he really didn't believe initially, because how could a couple drops of this little thing have such a profound impact? So after, the majority of our conversation, he's like, look, prove it. I'm like, all right, here's a bottle, take 10 drops, call me in the morning. And that was the extent of our use trial. So he did so, called me the next morning, and he's like, does this make you dehydrated or does this make you constipated? I'm like, no, it made you constipated. He's like, why did it make me constipated? It's like, well, let me give you the mechanism of action. So heavy metals are what block cells from bringing in intracellular water. You're drinking a gallon of water a day. You're 6'10", I'm 5'10". A gallon of water might work for me, but in the process that you just did, your body wants to use more water because it's going to flush some stuff out. Your cells are going to start rehydrating. So in the 10 drops that you took, this little process kicks in pretty quickly. You need more water because your body started pulling water from your GI, and therefore you're constipated. Hydrate more than what you're doing, you won't be constipated, but you can see what's happening in the process. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, yeah, I know. And a week later, he had to call me because his buddy who had a diagnosis of an issue that they call multiple sclerosis didn't exist anymore after a week, which intrigued him greatly. And that's what led to the introduction with Christina. But what Dory and Claire and Mark have gone over is absolute. You have to have water because there's one symptom of not having water. It's called death. If you're not hydrated, it's going to lead to your demise, and it's going to lead to other issues. And if you get headaches when you start taking Clean Slate, all it is like having your car with a warning light come on that's telling you you're dehydrated because your brain is bathed in synovial fluid, which is water. If you don't have enough of it, you don't have enough water going through your system, you're going to get warning signs. It's crucial. It's absolute. It's the one thing that is easily controlled. And here's a little secret for everyone. When we look at the difference between animals and humans, people ask me how many drops my dogs get. They get like 10 twice a day. And people go, wait a minute, I can't use 10 drops on myself. Why would I do it on my dogs? I'm like, well, because my dogs have water dishes and they're smart enough to go to it when they know they need it. Humans are too stupid to drink water. We're going to go drink something else that in most instances are actually diuretics. So the things that you think you're drinking because they make you feel good, the sodas, even tea, they're diuretics. So you're actually dehydrating yourself while you're drinking fluids. So what you really need is just more water. And if you drink more water regularly, you can be like her. Because the Tilly dog knows when we do our runs every morning, one of the things that she does religiously is for two reasons. One is to cool off. The two is to rehydrate. She jumps in the pool. She goes, lays on the first step in our pool, and then she starts drinking the water because it's a saltwater pool. So I'm okay with her drinking it because she's getting more salt and sea salt. But she knows it's good for her. So she goes, she lays down in the pool. She drinks more water. She gets some of her salt. She comes in, she eats, she drinks more water. We don't do that. That's the difference. That's why animals can take more drops than people can because they're smarter than we are. I got my rant in. Thank you, Dory.
You're welcome.
But it's also why Clean Slate is best when you put it in water because you know you're drinking more water.
Mm.
Right?
The other thing too is when somebody tells you that, like, I want to do that water because I thought water would be interesting because everybody has to drink water, right?
Yeah.
It's really important. And so for anybody out there telling you, oh, I don't have this problem or I don't have that problem, don't go after people with problems, right? A lot of people tend to do that. Oh, they got these problems, right? Everybody needs a clean slate. You drink water, you eat food, you're breathing, air, you're breathing. Yeah. I mean,
I will argue a point with you on that because, and I've hit on this before. I actually brought this up in a deposition in dealing with bad people. Not everyone needs Clean Slate. There are a bunch of people that are just bad people. They don't need Clean Slate. We don't want bad people to get better. Some bad people just need not exist. But everyone that's a good person that wants to be better and achieve greatness really needs Clean Slate. They need Restore. They need Zero In. You need Relive. because there's intention behind it. It's not that the formulas are phenomenal. Oh, wait, they are. It's the intention that's in them for what they're intentionally designed to do. And that's what's really, really important is if you want to be the best version of yourself, if you want your kids to be as healthy as possible, like Mark was talking about, if you want your mother to be as healthy as possible, or like Andy was talking about as we were going over yesterday, even your mother-in-law, which is rare, right, guys?
What did you say?
You want your mother-in-law to be healthy. This
Oh,
is something you should do. Most guys may not have the best relationship with their mothers-in-law or mother-in-laws. You never know. Me, I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law. She tolerates me now. She didn't like me initially. It took a while. I'm like a fungus, eventually I'll grow on you where I'll take over.
I tell you what I noticed when I first started taking Clean Slate, because I have a bit of heavy metals and fillings, particularly mercury, I found what you were saying was blocking the cells of absorbing water. And it would actually go, if I drank too much, it would go as sort of water retention into the interstitial spaces. So once the heavy metals were cleared, my cells were able to absorb more clearly. Plus it helped with the salt as well, the Himalayan salts, because we had the first version. So there was less of that water retention, especially for us ladies. So
Claire, let me ask you a question real quick, because you're about 28 years old and you've been doing health and wellness stuff for about 18 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And through your experience, which is more than 18 months and probably 20 years or so, right?
Bit more
all
than
of
that.
All of the stuff that you've done, all of the wellness work you've done for your entire life, your entire career, hadn't done what these little drops did. It amplified and magnified a lot of what you had been doing, but it was filling gaps that you hadn't been able to get to yet.
Absolutely, and that is what I was looking for, particularly as you know, I work with flowers and frequencies and energy, and it just perfectly supported it. And sped up the process of changing things up completely on multiple levels.
So that kind of speaks to the concept of being like BASF that you've touched on. And if you're old like me, you probably remember some of those commercials, because BASF had some of the greatest commercials ever, right? That we don't make stuff, we just make things better. And we've had lots of questions from people about, if I'm taking all of these different supplements, do I need to take them? If I'm using the Trinity, if I'm using Relive? The answer is maybe not. But I would argue the same thing goes for most prescription medications, right? That as you become more bioavailable, you might not need as much of what you're taking to get the same effect, because what people have to understand, and this is why we're the only ones ever to introduce quantumceuticals to the market and have an understanding of this, because there's never been another human made like my wife, right? And it's this: if everything is energy and everything is frequency, as we're learning about water, if that's the case and energy is infinite, does quantity mean a lot? Or is it quality and frequency and intention that makes the difference? And then stacking those frequencies or those components, because our body energetically will synthesize what we give it, like with water. So you look at something like Zero In, where if we were to comparatively look at the ingredient profile and the actual, I'll say the stack of the exact amounts of each one of those ingredients, if you compare it to other products in the market and what people are doing to biohack and use those ingredients, they're taking 10, 20, 50 times more of a quantity of these ingredients than you get in 0N, yet 0N is more effective than all of them because it's not about the quantity. It's about those components of how your system is using it and how they're combined. It's the energetics.
We
right?
did an experiment with Emoto where we used different dosages of, they were flower drops, and the more powerful effect was the less amount of the drops.
And there's actually a law of physics. There's a law of physics that was published in 1972. And I've gone over this before with the pet cow effect. You can look it up, PETKAU. But it's a law of physics that was applied. I should write a book on this. We should collectively write a book on this because it would be interesting. What we'll do is we'll have everybody here, all 200 people, we'll all publish it together.
Everybody do a chapter.
We're actually, what we need to do is everybody just chip in like 5 words. And then we'll put it all together, and then everyone can say they're a published author. How kick-ass is that? But here's the thing with the pet cow effect. Everybody that's put something in chat is going to be part of this book. But here's the thing with the pet cow effect, what it talked about, because it was looking at a law of physics with radiation exposure. I think I'm the only one to talk about this because no one really cares to even apply it yet. But with radiation exposure, and Chernobyl's been kind of in the news recently because of some events that are going on for whatever reason that are going on in Eastern Europe or around Russia and Ukraine, who knows? But the theory was this: it used to be believed that a large dose of radiation exposure was more deadly than small dose exposure over an extended period of time. That if you got hit with a radiation blast, that was going to be more damaging than just a little bit of exposure, over that longer period. That theory kind of got blown out of the water by about 4 billion to 1, because what the data showed is that if you are given a large dose of something, and in this instance, it was looking at radiation, that your body actually recognized the hit, and through liver enzyme function, liver function, and how the body would work, it identifies that and says, oh, wow, there's a lot of this. This is something I don't need, I can't use, I need to get rid of it. But on the inverted side, that if you give it a little bit of something, your body will take it in and go, oh, let me see how I process this. It does this and this. Oh, I don't need this. I don't like it. I'm going to store it. I'm going to put it away. So it stores it in fat. Now, if you do that every day, and this is how you poison someone with arsenic as well. You hit them with a large dose, and you can watch my interview with Will Davis on this. You hit them with a large dose, you can kill them, but your body can respond to it. But if you poison them a little bit every day, it's actually more deadly because it'll build up in your system. It'll cause lymphoma. It'll cause leukemia. It'll cause diabetes. It'll cause you to go blind. It'll cause you to go deaf. Those are all the things Will got to deal with. We reversed all of it, but that's another story that you can find on the YouTube channel. But it's little exposures.
What did you eat? Snacks.
I can't mute somebody, and Nancy's got to go.
Like actual fruit?
I'm not a host.
Here, I muted her.
There we go.
I did it.
She does it one more time, we kick her out just for giggles. I love doing that when I get to do my trainings. People get exiled. So it's important to understand that it's the energy. It is not a matter of quantity that you need. Even a little bit goes a long way. And
Big effect.
when you have the right intention, it compounds. And that's where, if you understand biochemistry, and the nice part is having a nanobiotechnologist that just so happens to be the formulator and creator of everything. When you understand peak plasma levels and you understand creating a steady state of what that means, and it's a matter of consistency. You might only use a little bit, right? Because that's all you need to get the effect. But then it's a matter of just using it consistently to attain the levels of performance that you want, whether it's from a detoxification standpoint, whether it's what Restore is doing. And, if you've heard from Andy Harmon on what he's doing on the golf course and how he's using Restore and how he's using 0N. And it's an important part of understanding with neurotransmission in addition to hydration, right? People understand hydration, that if you're sweating and you're active, you're releasing water, so you need to replace water. Well, neurotransmitters actually function the same way. You're going to use them up depending upon what you're doing, so you have to replenish them. That's why one of us, this guy, and you can see my shirt for the day that actually pretty much sums it up, is loving 3, because I know if I raise my vibration up early enough in the day, and each capsule is good for about 5 hours on average, I know based on what I'm doing throughout the day that I'm going to be good all day long. And then if I'm going to get less sleep, I'll take another one before I go to bed. And yes, if you haven't done it yet, don't be afraid of it. Try it. And then chart what your dreams were like and how well you slept the night before, because you'll probably be in a freaking coma. And it all comes down to what you intend to do. If you want to intend to go to sleep, you'll sleep. But if you don't control your emotions and you don't control your thought process and your intention, you might stay up until 4 o'clock working or cleaning the house.
Done that before.
Yeah, that too has been done. So I'm done. You guys got to go long. I'm done ranting.
Okay, well, we're over the hour. We do have a few questions. I see Annalyn has her hand up. Do you want, Annalyn, you want to say something to us?
Unmute.
She just,
Well, I'll answer Mary's question real quick. She's got a 9-year-old daughter about 0 in. And I've seen kids as young as 5 use 0 in, and they, a half a capsule to start with, and you can open it up. You can put it in food or yogurt or in a beverage. And it's absolutely amazing for them. And if you think that kids aren't under stress and kids aren't toxic and need more dopamine and serotonin, I don't know, look up ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, and the rest of the spectrum.
but she's asking about if the caffeine can stunt her growth.
No, because
I'm not saying that.
It's
in caffeine, and I don't actually think there's any research on caffeine stunting growth, is there?
I haven't seen any.
I stopped drinking coffee when I was 8. So
is it okay if I comment? So
there we go,
my
Mary.
Hi. So my son's a chemical engineer and really gets in my head about this stuff. I've been on all your products for about 2 weeks now. I started because I had shingles. It's been amazing for me. I've been drinking tons of water. I put my dog on it who was going blind. He's like a puppy now. It's amazing. So my daughter, who I want her to focus in school, I gave it to her once. She told me she had a fantastic day. She didn't even know what I gave her. So, but then my son got in my head and said, you're going to stunt her growth. Don't do it. So I should not be afraid is what you're telling me.
Absolutely.
Right. And it depends on how you define growth. I mean, if you have a kid come home going, wow, I did so well in school and I feel amazing, I'm going to take that growth curve. I mean, because
and I agree, and everything in it, even the ingredients, it's like they're getting caffeine in the chocolate she eats, or when her daddy brings her home a Slurpee that I don't want her to drink, she's getting caffeine. So that's not stunting her growth, but this amazing pill is going to. So okay, I'm keeping her on it.
Yeah, no, and that'll be the fun part to track too. The one thing I'll give you advice on, because I had to go over this with my child. And when he was 15 and 16, when we first started him on it, just make sure that she's not taking a full pack of pills to school and she starts passing them out like Skittles. They get their own, and then they can tell their friends, and their friends will ask, whatever you're on, I want it. Because that's the important part of kids ask those questions from their classmates. You might not know it, but they're having those conversations. They're just like us. They just have access to different things that a lot of times we don't know they have access to.
And one more quick question. So the Restore, which I absolutely love, okay, how much of that can I give her?
I give her like a quarter of a sachet. She's 9.
Okay.
You can,
all right. I don't want to take up any more questions, but thank
quarter
you.
to a half a sachet is good.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if any of those comments were wrong, everyone blame Dory.
Take them all out. This is the part that gets axed.
Yeah.
So go ahead and ask your questions because it's all going to go away anyways. Just to keep on the safe side.
Right.
We have to be careful.
Here's a question. Is clean slate harmful to a small dwarf rabbit? I don't see why it would be.
No, I'd only give them like one or two drops.
One drop. Yeah, one drop or something like that.
Put it on their food and not on their water. I'd actually only give them one drop because if they're a dwarf,
they're a dwarf. I would just give them one. Look at the very first question, Clayton.
But you have to the first question all the way up top.
All the way up to the very top.
I thought another drink was. Wait, no, hold on.
No, keep going. Julia is Julia's question.
So if you have a dwarf rabbit in this world, you might have a conversation with the rabbit just to see if they identify as being a dwarf because they might be offended. So just make sure that you're talking to your animals. You talk to your rabbit and say, look, you're really small. Do you identify as a dwarf or do you identify as a full-size rabbit that just happens to be a little bit smaller? Don't judge, right? We're not into labels here.
Julia, go ahead and ask your question.
I might make it grow.
Oh, she needs to unmute herself. Wait.
Yeah, unmute.
If the dwarf rabbit turns into a...
Wait, here's Julia.
Okay, thanks. I don't think Clayton can see my question because he got on later.
Oh, wow. Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
I contacted you already, Clayton, because of my friend in China. She had a stroke, possibly due to shingles, and possibly due to the third jab. She just ordered a year's supply of the Trinity, but there are the warnings on it because of shellfish. She is allergic to shellfish.
It's important. There's no shellfish in the product. And this is something let me speak to all of the warnings on the labels. And I don't have them in front of me, but this is kind of important for everyone to understand because I was talking about this with our internally from a customer service standpoint this morning. And I believe where we only have, it's less than 0.3% of all of our revenue actually gets returned, which if you understand business is insane.
Yeah.
But the key on the warning labels when it comes to shellfish and nets and everything, we have the warning label because the facilities that these products are made in also will manufacture products that have shellfish, that have nuts, that have peanuts, that have other things in them. But each one of our products is actually produced in a clean room. So there is nothing in them that is going to cause a problem, but the entire building itself does do it. So we have to properly put it on the label because it's important because of what we're doing. Also from a warning standpoint, where it says that if you have heart issues or you have anxiety or depression, that you consult with your physician or healthcare practitioner when using these products. There's a reason for that. One, you kind of have to have the warning on anything anymore because of those issues, right? Especially now, because like you're talking about, these people are really screwed if they're not playing with us. But we have those warnings on the label because if you have those issues and you're medicated and you're using Clean Slate, Zero In and Restore, you're going to get healthier. And if you have ever watched a commercial for any of the medications that one might be on, those medications can cause side effects, some death, some liver failure, sometimes different things that you might not like. But as your body becomes healthier, you're not going to need the medication. So you're going to need to work with your healthcare professional to decrease what you're taking. This has actually been practiced by many genius PhDs in Norway and different parts of the world because their medications no longer exist in their medicine cabinet, i.e. Dr. Dory Narbo. So that is why. So it's a good question.
Thank you. Okay, Axel has a question.
Yes, thank you. My question is, I have quite a few customers who, after starting with Clean Slate, I feel wide awake during nighttime. And I'm wondering where this comes from.
You know, it's interesting when they feel wide awake, because I'm actually going to be speaking on this in London on a Saturday in 2 weeks, because the wide awake aspect of being asleep comes from decalcification of your pineal gland and your third eye opening up. So their eyes are closed, but they're actually seeing. You're in a dream state, and you're actually becoming more aware and more alert of your environment, but you're not seeing with these two eyes, you're seeing with your third one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're taking zero in with that, and you're boosting your dopamine and serotonin, so the serotonin is, after it's created melatonin to put you to sleep, extra serotonin will convert to DMT, which is where your dream states, really enhanced dreams, and visibility can come in. And depending upon what you're doing, how you can say how connected you are energetically and spiritually to that which is around us, you're going to start seeing things that you might not see in the physical world. And I've seen there's been some cool memes and some good posts about our vision with our two eyes, that there's a very small frequency range that we only visually can see. But there's a much more broad frequency range around us that is not in our visible range, but is actually here. And that third eye, when it's decalcified, is what people are seeing. It's been interesting in my journey. There's been multiple times, because of just how my body functions, that I'll fall asleep when driving. If I'm driving really late at night and I'm really tired, because when I'm ready to shut down, I'll just shut down, and I can close. But I've been able to close these eyes and sleep and actually drive. And I haven't killed myself yet. I don't recommend it. I really don't recommend it. But there's been a couple times.
X-ray vision.
That's because you have a Tesla and it's driving
No,
itself.
even before the Tesla. But yeah, having autopilot is a very good thing. If you want a Tesla, you can win one by being on RPS.
All right, we are way over the hour. I think you have your
Thanks,
consciousness show, don't you, Clayton?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna call it a wrap.
But we got into some good stuff at the
Yeah,
end.
we did.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone, for
Participating.
stopping in. And let me just put the gallery view on so everyone can say goodbye. And it's too bad Birgit isn't here, but happy birthday to her. Let's all bombard her Facebook and just like happy birthday to her. She'll like that. Anyways, okay, everyone.